Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus said, "For it is if a man going on a journey summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Holy and gracious God, I speak in your name and in your presence, asking that my words would be pleasing to you, guided by your Spirit, and that the hearts and minds of your people would be open to you. Through Christ our Lord, I pray. Amen. So, welcome to Gratitude Sunday, or Financial Pledge Sunday. This morning is the one Sunday of the year at St. Barnabas where we come together to make our financial pledge to the church for the coming year. So, if you happen to be a guest this morning, I just want you to know we're not expecting that from you. And I want to just alert you that that's what's happening in our service this morning, and So my hope, by the way, the business is very personal to us at St. Barnabas, but I hope the message this morning will be relevant to all. So we have this parable of the talents, the 5 talents, the 2 talents, and the 1 talent. And I want to place that in its context a bit. You remember last Sunday we had the parable of the 10 bridesmaids, and I pointed out that that was the third of 3 parables that were all about keeping watch or being ready. And in my message last week, I invited us to live ready. Live ready. This morning's parable continues that same theme. It's just a little bit different. And this parable and last week's parable and the 3 parables are all also part of a bigger conversation in which Jesus is actually responding to his disciples. And they have asked him, Lord, when will the end be? When is the end of the world coming? When will you return to set everything right, to squash Israel's enemies, to fulfill all the Old Testament prophecies of the greatness of Israel, and we'll become again this glorious nation, and all the Gentiles will be subject to us as the people of God. And when is all this going to happen? Now, I think it's really important to pause for a moment and at some level consider to what extent Jesus is responding to their conceptual theological framework and to what extent he's responding to the way things actually are. So, does Jesus actually agree with all of this, or is he going with it because it's their point of view? And I would suggest that both things are true. That to some degree, there is this eventual all things will be made well, yes. And then there is his disciples' idea of how that's going to happen. And Jesus has been confronting that all along, but to some degree, in this conversation, this sermon, I think he's kind of going with it a bit because he wants to go somewhere else. So it's like he travels with them away, but then I think he redirects the emphasis. So many times Jesus says in this kind of teaching, no one knows the day nor the hour. Not even the Son of Humanity knows the day nor the hour. Therefore, always be ready. And the 3 parables, last week's parable of the bridesmaids, that was the third of 3 parables about that, really emphasized always be ready. And I want to revisit some of those themes briefly this morning. So Jesus is saying, don't just be ready for the end of time. Be ready right here, right now, in every here and every now. You all have heard me preach this many times. Be present right here, right now. Live ready. Live present. Everyone is going to die. Newsflash. You don't have to wait till the end of time to when the moment will come when your death will come and you need to be ready. But it's not just that. Trials and tragedies and traumas and challenges are going to enter your life all the time. Be ready when they come. And not just that. Be ready in every circumstance, in every situation. Be ready. What does be ready mean? It means be in your relationship with your God. Now, I want to say this carefully. Relationship with God has ebbs and flows. One day I'm really clear about how it's going. The next day I'm not sure at all what's going on. And the next day I'm not sure God's even around. Therefore, stay in the relationship. Don't pull back from it. Stay in it. And that's why there's 3 parables in a row about be ready, be ready, be ready. And those together, those three parables help us see that relates to all of life, not just some things of life, but all of life. Be ready. And last week, the sermon was designed to prepare us for this morning when we would make our financial commitment. And so part of what I encourage us to do in that, with respect to be ready, with regard to how my money reflects my relationship with my God, I invited us to find a place of freedom. And I really, really urge that. By the way, I would urge that with all aspects of following Jesus. Find the place within yourself where it's free. There's this deep sense of freedom. And what I mean by that, with regard to our money, again, money is so difficult because it touches so many aspects of our lives. What I would want for you, and last week I said, I wish I could be sitting with you in your living room. And we could be talking, and I would want to look at you and say, with regard to your money and how your money reflects your faith and your discipleship, I would like you to make a commitment that then you have this deep sense of freedom. I have responded faithfully to my God with my money, and now I'm free. And so what that looks like is when you're out shopping and you get ready to spend some money, you feel it's all right. I can spend the money. When you get ready to plan a vacation and it's going to cost a lot of money, and you're thinking, you know what? I've been faithful with response to my God with my money, and I have a sense of freedom that it's all right to use my money this way. That's what I mean by freedom, that you would find that for you, that you would be set free. Not guilty, not reluctant, not pressured, but freely giving, and then the fruit of that is this deep sense of freedom with regard to your money. Now, by the way, I understand that's a moving target. I understand you might be free one day and not the next. I understand that. But the goal is still the same, that I would keep living into my relationship with my God such that I would feel good about it and I would feel free. It's this feeling state of freedom. Now also, any of you who are members of St. Barnabas, or if you're on our friend list, you would have received a letter from me, and the letter invited a very similar theme. The letter invited us to give joyfully. Wouldn't that be marvelous? That how I respond to my God with my money gives me a sense of joy or cheerfulness. Find that place in your soul and do that. Whatever that amount of money is, do that. I'd love for us to have the feeling state of cheerfulness or joy and the feeling state of freedom. My conscience would be clear. The sermon from last week is on the website. If you'd like to get the letter, if you didn't get it, if you call the office, we'll send you the letter. I wish they weren't mine, so I don't sound self-promoting, but I think they're very helpful resources when it comes to this topic about making our financial commitment in response to God's goodness in our life. So I commend those to you. Now, today's passage, the talents. If the message of the bridesmaids, live ready, was challenging, I'm gonna amp it up a little bit. Are you ready? First of all, remember, it's a parable, it's a parable, it's a parable. So don't get all wrapped up in the details. Go to the point of the parable. And by the way, a talent was equivalent to 20 years of wages. So one individual received a sum of money to go invest that's equivalent to 20 years of wages. Another one received 40 years of wages. Another one received 100 years of wages. I love that. Secondly, I think that the talents, the gift of the talents, is a metaphor or an allegory of the gift of our lives. I think Jesus is saying, your life is a gift to you. What are you going to do with your life? You know, when we talk about money, we often talk about stewardship. And you'll notice I didn't call this Stewardship Sunday, I called it Pledge Sunday. Because stewardship is a much bigger topic than money. It's a much bigger topic. Stewardship is everything. You are the steward of your life. Your life is a gift to you. And together, we are stewards of the earth. The earth is a gift to us. And so, this parable of the talents is all about what are we doing with the gift of our life. Now, man, I wish we could do a whole series on this. This is one of the most profound topics. Let me ask you something. What's the gift of you? What's the gift of you? What's the gift of your life? I'm not talking about your skills. I'm not talking about your talents. I'm not talking about your giftedness. I'm talking about the essence of you. What's the gift of you? If you ask the people that know you best and that love you, what would they say is the gift of you? Would they say, "Oh my gosh, Frank, you're just such an encouraging person. Everything about you is just encouraging"? What if they were to say, "Oh my gosh, Sally, the gift of you, you're just this remarkable giving servant. It just flows out of you. Your essence is to serve." And you might understand, by the way, that there's lots of talents and skills that go along with that, but that's different than the essence of you. What's the essence of you? Again, you are the steward of your life. What is that life? And how are you being a steward of it? Which then plugs right into the next question. What's the mission of your life? What's the purpose of your life? Especially as a follower of Jesus, how is it that you understand that your life has a purpose, it has a mission, gifted to you by God to be part of what God is doing in the earth? To what sense do you view your life that way? And actually become intentional about, this is the gift of me, and I'm a steward of this gift, and this is how this gift is used. I use that word very carefully, but this is how this gift is deployed, is works in the world to further God's purposes for the world. That's what my life's about. I think that's what Jesus is saying in this parable. That's what it means to be ready. That's what it means to say yes to Jesus, is to understand that my life is a gift. And it's meant to be a gift. So the first two servants, that one that had the 5 and the one that had the 2 talents, and they come back to the master and they said, "Master, we invested our gifts and we bore more gifts." And I love it that the master said the same thing to both of them. It's not about the quantity, it's about the faithfulness of the life. "Well done, good and trustworthy servant. Enter into the joy of your master." Then the third servant, and by the way, the whole parable is about this guy. It's what it's really about, is this guy. And I want you to hear it carefully. "I was afraid." Who in this room is not afraid? Now, by the way, some of people in this room have been around a while. And I've met some octogenarians that are afraid of nothing, damn it. But most of us are still working through our fears and anxieties and insecurities of all kinds. To be a mammal is to be afraid. Notice that he acknowledges his fear, and here's the rub. His fear caused him to see God in a way that he responded to that. I knew you to be a harsh man. By the way, I think the master in the parable is an allegory for Jesus. I knew you to be a harsh man. I knew you to be a man who reaped where he didn't sow. And what's the other one? Reaped where he didn't sow. Oh, shoot. It just left me. What? And gathered where you did, and reap where you did, gather where you didn't. What? Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. Help me, Jesus. All right, but you get the point. I knew you to be unfair. I knew you to be unjust. And I knew you to be a harsh man. And so he rather than dealing with his fear, he kept it and let his fear tell him who his master was or who God was, and he hid his life. He hid his life in the ground. And, oh, Jesus. So go to the end of the parable, weeping and gnashing of teeth. I promise you, there's nothing sadder than a hidden life. Anyone who reaches the end of their life and they realize, out of fear, I hid my life, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That my life, the gift of my life, I never laid hold of the stewardship of my life. I hid it out of fear and out of anxiety about who God was. And my life never bore fruit. Now that's an either-or statement. Most of us are somewhere in between there. And by the way, fear is hard. All of us are afraid. All of us are anxious. But watch what Matthew's already said about that. What Jesus has already said about it in Matthew's gospel. Jesus has said, I am Emmanuel. I'm with you to be for you and to be on your side. I'm not the one to be afraid of. I am the one who said, all you who are weary and heavy laden, i.e. all of you who are afraid and anxious, come to me. Come to me. My burden is light and my yoke is easy. I will make space for you. Do not be anxious. Don't you know that your Father knows the very hairs of your head are numbered? Look at the birds. Look at the lilies of the field. Know that your Father loves you and cares for you and is for you, not against you. Yes, we are all afraid. All of us. And Jesus enters the scene offering a vision of a God who understands our fears and who is with us and is for us. And you've heard me preach it Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. Jesus begins his ministry in all the Gospels. He begins it offering good news, not bad news. A God who was with us and for us and on our side. He begins his ministry welcoming everyone and bestowing upon them the bounty of God. And this servant, because for whatever reason, we don't know, but because he couldn't begin to deal with his fear and project it onto who God was, he was stuck in it. And the gift of his life was buried. So, again, I just wish I had more time. I'd love to talk about courage. I'd love to talk about how things enter our life and circumstances happen and they work in us to help us learn to have a courageous response to life. And by the way, it's my experience, most people do. Most people do. And especially in this community, it's a remarkable community. But today's theme is about our financial commitment to our God, our financial response to God's goodness in our life. And what I would love for you, I've already said, I'd love it to be free. I'd love it to be cheerful. This morning, I want to advance that a little bit. And what I would love for you is a deep sense of embracing the gift of you and the mission of your life, and that your financial resources are consistent with that. this deep sense of this is who I am. This is why I exist. This is the mission and the purpose of my life, and my money is consistent with that. And that requires a level of intentionality and a level of thought and a level of prayer that says, by the way, in relationship with a good God, a merciful, understanding, and kind God who is with me, who has gifted me with my life and invited me to join in God in carrying on God's purpose for the earth and for humanity and for all of God's creation. The gift of my life is part of that. And so my financial resources, I use them consistently with that purpose of my life. And by the way, hopefully, if you've been here very long at all, you happen to know I'm all about fun. I'm all about joy. I use this word carefully. I'm all about pleasure. And especially what I mean by that is a lovely evening with good wine and good food and good friends and the joy and the pleasure and the goodness of all of that. I think that's a big part of God's purpose for all of us. But only to the degree that I live into that, into my relationship with God, that and am met by my God in my seeking God because of my fears and because of my uncertainties and because of my anxieties. As I live into that relationship, then I discover this about this God who is for me. And so when I go about my day, whatever it is, last week I told you I was buying a new pair of shoes, and maybe I'm planning a dinner party, and maybe I'm planning a vacation. In all of that, I have this freedom and this joy and this sense of, yes, this is why I exist. And there's this wonderful freedom and joy in that. That's what I would want as your pastor. That's what I would want for each of us and for all of us as a community. So, as I said, we introduced this theme last week, and then you received a letter from me, and so hopefully you've had time to think about that and pray about that. And now this morning, I just added the layer of the gift of our life and the mission of our life. And so now we're going to have some time, a little bit of time, and for you to fill out a pledge card in just a minute. The chairman of our pledge campaign is going to come and talk to us a little bit about how to do that. And by the way, if anything you've heard this morning, you say, you know what, I'm not ready, I need to think and pray some more, please do that. Please do that. There's no pressure about now or any time. Please feel free to make your commitment when you're ready. Thank you.